Welcome everyone to the Town Hall webinar with Chair of the Board, Holland Lynch, and SYA President Tom Hassan. Thanks for joining us. Just a quick note that we are recording this and we plan to share it with others in the SYA community. In terms of an outline for our town hall, it's pretty simple, pretty brief. We are looking to Tom, who will give us an update on the school year. We're coming to the end. Students return on May 26th. So just in a couple of weeks, they're wrapping up the year, doing all the last minute things on their bucket list for being abroad. Very exciting for them. So he'll do kind of a recap of the school year. And then we'll volley it over to Holland, who will talk about some of the just overview, high level things that the board is looking at currently. We just had our spring meeting in Italy, which they will both share about in their comments. And she'll share more about the priorities that the board's looking at. And then Tom will just give us a preview of the next school year, which is looking really great. Numbers are strong and we're excited. So he'll give some more detail on that. And in the meantime, if something comes up that you have a question about or something that you want to know a little bit more about, then please use the Q&A or the chat box, and we will we'll address those at the end. We'll have a little Q&A session. So that's what we're doing today. So with that, I'll introduce you to Tom Hassan, SYA President.
Great. Thanks so much, Erin. And I want to take a minute to thank you and your team who do so much to connect alums with each other and alums to SYA Today and things like this. So thank you. And there's also a number of other webinars that we do to connect alums to their specific country and language, and also around fields of interest. So look forward to those, and we've had a great year of those as well. So let me begin by saying it has just been a wonderful, wonderful year of SYA. And as people remember, a year ago at this time, we couldn't have students abroad for the first time ever in SYA's history. So to have kids there this year was incredibly special for each other, because I think that generation of kids were behind a computer screen for a good portion of a school year. And so to be together in Rennes or Zaragoza or Viterbo was just, it has been truly special. And also these students are, kind of taking themselves out of their comfort zone as generations of SYAers have in the past, and exploring the language, the culture, and in my mind, a real specialness of SYA is being part of a host family. And as Erin mentioned, we're just in Italy, and one of the most amazing moments for us is to spend time, each of us connected with a student and went home one night and had dinner. And the student served as a translator. But what you saw is amazing outpouring of connectedness. And I have to say, my particular host family, probably one of the best cooks in the world. So it was a special night. Previously in the day, we had spent some time, all the trustees, with groups of students in Italy. As people remember, one of the hallmarks now of the SYA curriculum is that each campus has one day a week where students do field work. So we used that day in Italy, that morning, for the students to take us around Viterbo, serve as wonderful guides of what they have learned about that great walled city over their time, and they had to navigate and get us lunch, and then they shared their stories of why they came to SYA and what they're taking back with them. And it's clear to me that it's been as it has been a transformative experience for this group of students. Now, granted, this year they had to wear masks a lot, social distancing, but that did not deter them one bit. It was just tremendous to watch these kids connected with each other, and they're leaving in 2 weeks. You can already see some tears streaming down their faces. I think it's going to be a hard one. And the RDs report to me, the resident directors, that how connected these kids are, and what a very special year it was. I think they just bonded in tremendous ways. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Holland, but and thank her for her tremendous service as president of the board. It's a very active board. As many of you know, I've been connected to SYA through my time at Exeter. And for many years during that time, the SYA board was just made up of the heads of the 3 founding schools. But a number of years ago, SYA expanded its board to include a few more school heads. So we now have 5 member school heads of school on the board. And we also have about 12 alums who are incredibly engaged in the conversation. And I think I've on several boards, the most dynamic boards I've seen, because there's the perspective of the school head, and there's the love and the passion of the alums, and that comes together each time we meet. And thank goodness we met in the fall in North Andover, Mass, and now had the great treat to meet in Italy. So Holland, why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, thank you, Tom. Indeed, we are a very fortunate board, both in terms of our makeup, and it's really, as you said, a deeply engaged and very collegial board. And like many boards, we were unable to meet in person for 2 years. So our fall meeting last November was the first time we had gotten together in person in North Andover, and we'd been on Zoom, but it was really terrific. And then to be in Viterbo for our spring meeting just has brought us even closer together as a board and made our already deep sense of purpose all the more personal through the connections that we were able to just establish or reestablish with each other in our time in Viterbo, which I will say was magical. And it was in conjunction with the 20th anniversary of the Viterbo campus. So there was celebration, there was a very celebratory feel to it. As a board, it was really quite a unique experience for all of us, because we had both, as Tom referenced, the ability to go deep into the experience of the students. And many of us are alums, and some aren't, some are heads of school, sending schools. And for all of us to be able to experience a bit of the life of the students through the morning we spent doing their field work, going home with them for dinner, it was a reminder to all the alums of what a wonderful and life-changing experience school year abroad can be. And I really think it helped those, our guests and the other, the board members who are not alums, to see the program in action. And many schools, the board is on campus frequently, their parents or otherwise engaged. And that is really not the case with our board. So to have the opportunity to go to one of our campuses was great in terms of seeing what it's all about and seeing the kids and having a chance to chat with them. And they're so impressive. I could go on and on about how wonderful our conversations were, and hearing about the various capstone projects, which were particularly interesting. That's the end of year summation of their work. And it was also special for us because by meeting in a place that was not where we usually do our work, at the home office in North Andover, you all out there know the benefits of travel to change one's perspective, to allow you to step back a little from your everyday and think in a new way. That was very apparent and very essential to the work that we are doing as a board right now. In this year of sort of post-COVID, post the worst of COVID, I would say, as we're emerging from it, the educational landscape is changing a lot. And we as a board have done a lot of assessment this year, just trying to understand the climate out there, both for the global climate, the sending school climate, and our own school, and just where we fit in and how we can fit in, and step back and say, where do we want to be in 5 years? And what is our vision for SYA? What are opportunities that we see? What are some challenges that we might be facing? And to be able to do that on the heels of a lot of this deep dive into the lives of the students, but also in a place that's not where we usually do our work, was very, very fruitful for all of us. So it's been a great year, wonderful transition for me. I'm deeply appreciative to the staff and to the board for making it such a smooth transition. And just thrilled to be working with such a great group as we envision our future, our near future, and take advantage of the amazing program that School Year Abroad is. So I'll stop there. I know there are some questions, and Tom and I look forward to hearing what's on your minds.
Yeah, and I know you're collecting those right now, Erin. The one thing I would love to add too is that it's really great to see what interest there has generated this year. And I have to confess, at the beginning of the recruiting season, which obviously happens in the fall, we're a little worried because we weren't going to have the great ambassadors of kids who had just been at SYA back at their schools. So because the word of mouth is the prime way that kids find out about SYA, and the peer-to-peer thing is incredibly powerful. So we were worried we weren't going to have these ambassadors, as we call them, back on campus to talk it up. And also the pandemic was kind of up and down, and whether we're going to get on campus to actually talk to students was another thing. So we had a kind of a hybrid recruiting model. That all said, when the application deadline came to be, we had a tremendous interest. Now, this year, we have formalized what has happened in the past, which is there are times that we have admitted students for a semester. And what's clear to us is that we've been hearing from time to time, kids would love to go, but they can't go because they're engaged in something that has them on their campus for half the year, but could they come the other half? There's some people say, gee, in the financial scheme of things, my family can only afford a half a year. And we do have a robust financial aid program. So we have formalized that, and that was very popular. Although I have to say that we believe very strongly, and we know our DNA is a full year program. So we limit the spots that we have for semester students. And we've had those students there with us this year with great success. Basically we have an equal number of students in one country who are there in the fall and then who come in the spring. The bulk of the kids are full year students. So it's been again, I just smile because it's been one of those years that just as magically and flown by. I have to say, I can't believe it's 2 weeks and they're back in the States. So and with that, Erin, anything else you want to add before you moderate the Q&A?
I mean, I feel like there are a million things I could add about the time in Viterbo because, as Holland said, it was absolutely magical. For as someone that works in the home office in North Andover, Massachusetts, it's one thing to know the experience from what I've seen and just from the stories that alums have told me. It's a completely different thing to see it live and in person and to be guided around Viterbo and, into churches and other cafes and other places with students and have them be the guides and show off all the wonderful skills that they've been learning throughout the year. So very, very special. And yeah, I mean, what beats a host family dinner? It's like you get to see a student doing the translating and eat wonderful food and just have these really warm people welcome you into your home. And it's a very humbling and special thing that happens. So Q&A, yes, we have one that's and this is a big one. So but I think it's probably something that's on a lot of people's minds, and that actually over the last couple of days, we've been asked a few different times. So we are watching Russia's invasion of the Ukraine and considering the potential risks of sending our child to SYA Spain. Can you speak to how SYA is planning to prepare students, parents, host families, and the local administration at each campus for any challenges that might occur in the event of additional escalations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if I pull back the calendar to the winter and spring of 2020, we learned a lot about keeping a careful eye on things and having plans of how to safely evacuate students if need be, which we had to in all of our campuses. And then actually we pivoted in all of those campuses to keep our classes together. And they finished off the school year with SYA for the, I would say about 98% of the students did it that way. So we have that. So far, the reports, and we have a leadership team of the resident directors, and we meet all the time. In fact, I talk to each one daily, so that they give me reports from the ground. Obviously, this past year and a half has been a lot about the COVID stuff, but they're keeping an eye on what's going on over in Ukraine and Russia, and so we're ready to move if need be. And obviously, health and safety of the kids trump everything else in our what we do. We want to make sure the kids are safe. Well, I should note too that we are running our summer programs this summer in our 3 European campuses. So we have France, Spain, and this year Italy. Sometimes Italy can run and other times not, but all 3 of those. And there's only been one family who's nervous about that, but we've got about 100 students coming this summer to our summer program.
Can I also just add, it's not really on that topic, but when we were doing our field work with our students and walking around, we actually spoke to them about their experience of the situation in Ukraine being in Italy. And they were reflecting in a very mature way, I thought, of how their perspective being in a country that was receiving refugees from Ukraine gave them a much different perspective than their friends had back at home in the States, where there is a bit more distance, and how it was something that they felt was very special to the year. I mean, not in a positive way, obviously, for the global situation, but for their understanding of it and their understanding of the sympathy, the understanding of the situation and their empathy for a refugee situation, which they would not have had back at home. And it was just wonderful to see, and gave me hope for our future. I thought, well, this is a great perspective for these teenagers to be having. So just to add that.
All right, thanks. Another question that came in from Ross Elkin. How large is each of the programs now? Are American teachers still spending a year teaching English or other subjects at an SYA campus?
Yeah, great question. So we do have English and math teachers from America that come over. Sometimes they're there just for the year. Other times they may stay for 2 or 3 years, depending upon what their sending schools will allow them to be and our balance. So that's a wonderful part, which actually very much helps keep students whole. So when they get back to the States, they're in sync with their English curriculum and the math curriculum. So that's still an incredibly strong part of SYA. And then in terms of numbers, roughly Spain next year will be in the high 60s, France will be in the mid 60s, and Italy will be about 50, which is kind of slightly high on each of those, but within range of where we've had in the past. So that's great. So it's absolutely spot on and robust, which is nice to see. And we usually at this point have some openings. We don't this year. If people are interested, they can apply, and we'll put them on a wait list if an opening does come up.
Great, thanks, Tom. Another question, will SYA resume using alums for recruitment efforts, including interviews? And is there a possibility of resuming in-person recruitment? And then how can I as an alum be more involved?
I'll take the first part of that, and Erin, you can take the second. We do, actually, what we have found over time is kids love to talk to very, very recent alums because they want to hear what's happened in the last few years over there. So we do ask our alums, first of all, our current students and our young alums to refer a friend, of someone they think might be, and talk to the kid directly or let us know about that. And so they do some interviewing for us. I think that I mentioned earlier that one of the incredible things about SYA, it's the word of mouth. So it's student, but also alums can be incredibly helpful by identifying in their minds a kid who's probably approaching high school age and starting to talk about SYA. I think it has to, the seed has to be planted for a little while before it sprouts. And so what I wouldn't suggest is wait till the student's a junior and say, oh, the application's deadline's in a few weeks and you should look at this program. Because I think it takes kids some time to, and parents, some time to really kind of make this. So please, we met a number of kids in Italy and we asked the question all the time, how'd you find out about SYA? And it's like, well, my relative who went to SYA told me all about it and I've been always thinking about it. And so I strongly encourage alums just to plant those seeds whenever, wherever, and many of them will sprout.
So you kind of answered the last part, which is how alums can help, which is great.
Yeah.
So the other part of that, and I think I can answer this really easily, is there a possibility of resuming in-person recruitment? And actually that's already happened. So our admissions team was actually out on the road last fall and will continue to be out in schools meeting with students moving forward. So it's kind of like our events are right now, a hybrid model of, trying to get to people and meet people in person when we can, but also holding virtual events when we can't get to the folks that we need to, or if there's a school that admissions wants to get into that's maybe a little off the beaten path, a virtual event for them is great. So.
And actually, Erin, on that topic, obviously, we've got a highly energetic group of younger recruiters for us out there. But alums, if you know a school that hasn't had SYA kids and want us to kind of go in and talk a little bit with people at that school and can kind of promote it, that would help us enormously as well. So thank you for thinking about that possibility.
Right, and that was the other thing I was going to suggest. But obviously you all can see my title is Director of Advancement. So I will also make the plug that if you would like to make an ask of your classmates to support the annual fund, we would also love your help with that. If your class is coming up on a reunion and you want to schedule something somewhere, I see Doug Renfield Miller's on this webinar, and he and his class of France 71 just met in Rennes for their 50th. So if that is something that is of interest to you, then get in touch with us, get in touch with Susan McLean in our alumni office, and she will help to coordinate that. But certainly speaking with young people, getting the word out there, promoting SYA as much as you can is extremely helpful. And it's actually on our advancement committee's agenda to think of some other opportunities for ways that alums can help, because we know that you feel really strongly about the positive experience that you had and want to get engaged. So we're looking for ways to help you be able to do that. And speaking of Doug Grenfield Miller, he asked for an update on China. So Tom, you want to take that one?
Sure. At the moment, obviously we can't send kids into China. And we are, as a board, are having a discussion about, kind of where do we go with China? And that will be in the fall. So Doug, I'll keep you posted on that. And one of the things that we had to do, sadly, during the pandemic, and we knew we weren't going to be able to get kids back. So the wonderful teaching staff there, we have thanked them and they have found other work. But RD, John, and I really want to get over and thank them personally because it's such a connected community to SYA. So we're looking forward to a chance to get over there too and reunite with the faculty and thank them for their wonderful service. So, but in the fall, we'll talk more about it with the board.
Holland, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that, yeah. Did I make gesture as though I wanted to? I'm sorry. I was
No,
not
no,
along, yes.
Making sure everybody had an opportunity, since that's one that I know is on people's minds. So just making sure we cover it.
Yes.
Great. And then Jessica Green asked, well, she asked a couple of great questions. The first one was, Holland, where did you get that wonderful necklace? Which I did explain in the chat, but if you want to just let the others know.
Oh, yes, I'm happy to. This was a gift to the trustees, a necklace or a lapel pin in Italy from one of, I believe it's one of the families, host families, who is a silversmith and made them for us. And they are really beautiful. And I wear it with great pride. And actually, as I was walking through the streets of Viterbo after our meeting, I spent a couple of extra days there, went into a ceramics shop where I knew the owner was also affiliated with SYA, but immediately she noticed I was wearing the necklace and she noticed it. She said, "Oh, La Scuola," or my Italian is not very good. And it led to a wonderful conversation and was a good reminder to me also of how integrated SYA is in the community of Viterbo. After these 20 years, it's a great relationship between, town and gown, or, the school and the town. So.
In fact, on that note, Holland, the Friday night while we were all together, we had a big celebration and 300 people were there. Current host families, past host families. The mayor, when we started in Viterbo, the police officer spoke. Everyone was just so happy. And it is a very, very interconnected town gown relations. It's really sweet to see.
Tom, you have to tell them what the police officer said.
Oh, police officer told the kids, I love coming, visiting your school and talking to you, because he talks about safety and all of that. He said, but I don't like it when you come visit me in my office because you've done something wrong then.
Oh, we love Viterbo in that community. All right, another question from Jessica is, when will in-person regional alumni gatherings resume? And the answer to that is hopefully soon. We're coming up on the end of the school year. We were hopeful to maybe get a couple on the calendar, and but Tom and I are just venturing out now and starting to get those back on the calendar. Hopefully in the next year, the next school year, we will begin to host those regional events again in person, and maybe not at the same scale. We're kind of feeling out how folks are feeling with the ongoing pandemic. Even though it may not be at its worst point, people's comfort levels are very different. So just gauging that and seeing where those opportunities may be in the next school year. So hopefully soon, for sure.
And Erin, the interesting thing too is that the pandemic pushed us in a good way to use technology to connect alums. And again, as I mentioned at the very outset of my comments, around either language or reunions or whatever virtual. So I think we'll probably do certainly a combination of continuing those good things with in-person events. So.
Absolutely. Certainly we will continue doing virtual events, and the most popular one, and I guess this is not a surprise, and the pandemic pushed us into doing this, and it's been really successful, is having faculty teach a class to alums and to parents in language of an interesting topic generally. So while you're waiting for us to come back to your city, I encourage you to take a look at the calendar and hop online with us to learn from some of our faculty and some of our interesting alums who have volunteered to lead a panel on a given topic or a career conversation or a little while ago, we had a women in the wine industry who led a tasting for us. Like there's some cool things out there. So definitely check out the hybrid event schedule that we'll have going, and we'll keep on
And
going.
through SYA now, is that the primary, or they can go on our website combination?
Both. Yep, exactly. So SYA Now, the monthly newsletter, if you're not getting it, then write to me and we can check out why. We might just not have an updated email address for you, but certainly take a peek through that. There's a lot of good stories, and always publicizing the next events that happened. We just had one last night for our China alums, and they were able to gather with some of their former teachers, and they did a little class. I think there were over 30 of them that were in attendance, which is great. So, all right. Next question is, this year, have students' abilities to travel been impacted by geopolitical events in Europe? For example, the events happening in the Ukraine.
Yeah, actually, it's been smooth on the travel front. So kids travel in two ways, either through school-sponsored trips. And usually what happens is these days would have, in Spain, half the students would go with faculty to one part, and the other group the other part, and then later on in the year they'd switch locations. And then we still allow independent travel. We allow that in country, so they'll have to go to a place where they're going to use their language skills. That is done very carefully, which is they have to come up with the itinerary. Parents need to sign off on it. The resident director needs to sign off on it. And probably most importantly, that doesn't happen right away. We help students understand how to travel within country. We want their language skills to be strong. And then also we talk a lot about safety issues. And so the independent travel kind of happens, I would say, for instance, in the fall semester, wouldn't be happening till kind of late November. And so again, they earn it, and we get them up to speed about it. So those are the two major ways they kind of get out and about. And of course, I should mention too, their host families might take a family trip, and the students come along on that. And the last thing I want to say too is for years I've been watching with a little of sadness that RDs did not have discretionary funds. So if a student, a lot of students are going off to do something, and there are some students who just literally don't have that money to be able to do it. Through the capital campaign, we've established a fund where RDs have discretionary funds at their disposal, and they watch and make sure that students aren't left behind in any way. So I'm very proud that we've been able to do that, and really appreciate the campaign on many levels, including that one.
Thanks for giving a nod to the campaign for SYA, Tom. I appreciate that. It has done, it has accomplished many things that were very important in our strategic initiatives, and things that we had heard that alums were interested in and cared about. And that was certainly one of them. Well, sure, it's great that you offer all this financial aid and that students are able to get abroad, but what happens while they're there and they don't have the funds to go on a trip with their friends, or don't have the funds to, go out to a fun restaurant or whatever it might be for a social event. So those discretionary funds are now available to them, which is, like you said, is really rewarding to be able to do that for students and give them a similar experience to their peers, for sure.
And Erin, a thanks right back at you and your team for that amazing capital campaign. And I should just note that the public phase was during the pandemic, and every school head is in awe that we're able to pull that off and meet our goal during the pandemic, because we couldn't get out and talk to people, but had to Zoom in order to have these conversations about campaign gifts. So kudos.
Yeah. I appreciate the kind words, but I'm going to throw it right back to the SYA community, the alums, parents, everybody that participated, because they love this experience. And it was, so we're just entirely grateful to all of you who were part of that and made it possible. So thank you. All right, Jessica, I haven't seen the curriculum lately, but I hope SYA has held on to its liberal arts curriculum with history, literature, and art history. So question, but just making sure that that's still part of it.
Absolutely. In fact, we've held on to that. And just to give you quickly, students would be taking math, English, a language course, and then also we now have experiential language course where they get out of their seats and do this field work and capstone projects and things like that. So there's 4 courses. They have 6 courses to take. Another one, 2 of those other ones would be electives. So it'd be things like art history, politics, world, global issues through the lens of the country, which I think is terrific. We also have a science course now, and that's because more and more colleges are requiring at least 3, if not 4 years of science for kids. And ours are around environmental, and in Italy, there's agroecology, where they learn the science of wine making and cheese making and all those great things that happen over there. And I'm not sure every high school would have that course. So it's great that SYA can offer it.
I noticed that in Viterbo, that I had not focused on this, that there's a whole garden that the students have access to, which is wonderful. And I don't know if does that exist in France and Spain as well? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, Italy. We rent that garden for years, and it's been terrific. Yeah,
they were growing artichokes, and they had some fruit trees. It was grapes. Yeah. Very impressive.
I mean, do we want to talk about the capstone project that Anne Gray was asking us to participate in? I feel like this is a good forum for that.
So every year they make their own wine, and so they've kept these class bottles of wine over time. And her project is the trustees to rate the wine. And as I said to the board, I'm not sure there's any high school where kids are making the wine and the trustees are drinking it. I just don't think that happens. So that's one of our wonderful claims to fame. So
just to add, the capstone projects were quite fascinating, and that it was one of the great conversations that I will remember with the kids that took us around and others. And there was one student who was, she was quite an accomplished artist, and she was creating a sketchbook of flowers that grew in her family's garden and around, that she was seeing architectural features that unique to Viterbo. And it was a beautiful collection of Viterbi's scenes and record. And one of our group was also, he was looking at the different dialects. Apparently there are multiple dialects in the region, and he was taking a real deep dive into the language. There was a student who was looking at fashion. She said, I arrived in Italy wearing leggings and a sweatshirt, and look at me now. And she was, exploring fashion, and also some of the issues around the fashion industry. And so it was really quite a range and a real reflection of each of the individual students' experiences there. Yeah. And really,
I'm glad you brought that up, Holland. What's interesting is this is not, we stay away from the term paper and all that. This has to be your passion and using your language, and then presenting it to the community in some way, whether that's a visual representation or a presentation. But it's really important to get it. You can't do this in some library. That's not what we want. We want the kids to, again, use the place in ways to culminate their time there. So.
Yeah, I'll just highlight a couple others from the students that I talked to, because I think that's one of the more interesting things that happens at the end of the year in particular. And there were 2 kids that were in the fieldwork group that I was in, and they were both doing a law internship in Viterbo. And I won't give away too many details, but there's a well-known case of a young college student from years ago who was accused and involved in a murder case. And there was an immigrant who ended up going to jail because of that. And he actually lives in Viterbo, and the students have been able to speak with him and learn about the experience and the justice system and the immigration system generally there. So it's been certainly very enlightening for them. Another that was mentioned during the trustee meeting, I think it was by Megan Roof, who's the resident director in Spain, was I think there's a student who's learning why young women are continuing to become nuns in Spain. And I thought I would like to sit in and listen on that conversation because I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I think also just a lot of these projects serve also to highlight the evolution of the curriculum. And while it is still very, focused on language and art history, government history, and with the added science, but the evolution of really making it all the more place-based and experiential for the kids, which was another aspect of the strategic plan. The prior strategic plan was to not just send kids over to another country where they're sitting in a classroom and learning as they would at home, but to take full advantage of their being in a different environment and getting them out into it. So it's been a great evolution of the curriculum that I think has served the students very, very well. So that's a positive development, I would say, curricular development.
Yeah, and a shout out to China on that, because the kids in China had to do an individual learning project for years before the capstone was even a thing. And I think there was so much success and so much learning that came out of that when we were revising the curriculum, we said we need to start doing this in all of our countries. And then we piloted it in Italy. And to answer your question, Mark, yes, capstones are now an option, and they're actually a requirement in each of the countries. So each student needs to select a topic of interest to them, and then they work with their advisor to narrow it down and do their research throughout the year, and at the end present it to their peers and to the other folks in the community. Taking a look at the Q&A, it's looking like we've answered most of the questions. I do see your comment, Mark, about Cranbrook Kingswood schools in Michigan. And actually we've got a couple of connections there. So I'm glad that you're one of them as well.
Oh, great. AC Roach, who's now the president of the foundation there, was the vice chair of the board of SYA recently. So a good friend, and I'll twist her arm. We'll get there.
Just checking to see if there's anything else that I missed. Looks like we got everything. Any last minute questions from folks? And then Tom and Holland, any other things that have come to mind as we've been having this lovely conversation?
I would say that I've got a big smile on my face. It's been a tremendous year, and just feels really good where we are right now. And we've got a robust group of kids, an excited group of kids going over next year. And, again, keeping my fingers crossed that the world events don't alter that. We've learned from the pandemic that sometimes those things can really alter things for us. But let's hope that we continue on this great path. So, and thank you all for your tremendous support. And the last thing I would say is, whenever I ask alums to kind of describe their year, two words come to the fore, and that life-changing. And that's what we've been and we will be. So thank you all.
I echo that, and thank you all so much for participating today. It's forums like this are always a reminder of how wonderful it is to engage with the SYA community, and how grateful we all are to all of you for staying engaged and asking the good questions, and keeping up with SYA. We're glad you're here, and thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom and Holland. And I'll just make the final plea. As mentioned earlier, if you can make sure you check your inbox for SYA Now, which is our monthly newsletter. It's typically on the second Tuesday of the month. Every once in a while it comes out a little bit later, a little earlier than that, but keep a lookout for that. Check out the events that we're hosting. We're pretty much done with our event schedule for this year. So once we kick off the next school year, you'll start to hear more about that again. And if you haven't made a gift to this year's SYA fund, you've got till June 30th to do that. And we hope that after maybe hearing some of the things that are going on, you might be inspired to participate this year. So thanks for thinking about that. And as Tom and Holland mentioned, thank you so much for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next town hall. Take care, everybody.